I'm very happy to be talking about utopian futures today. Utopias are represented as something that is irrealistic, something that is unrealistic, something that is even in some ways immature, and representations that do not really have legitimacy in our society. But without utopian futures and representations, we would not be here today. It means that before any major social progress happens, it is always seen as utopian. For example, the abolition of slavery in the United States and in the entire Americas was considered a utopia at some point. Even people who wanted to abolish slavery started thinking about reform. So instead of wanting to abolish slavery, people thought that a world without slavery was not imaginable. A world without slavery could not exist because for several centuries it had structured the economic, political, cultural life of entire continents. And yet it happened. So at some point, utopian futures are starting to enter our representation, our conscious representation, and can make ways for change. That's the same with women's votes. For example, for a very long time, it was considered utopian for women to occupy political office, to be professors at university, to be renowned authors, and yet it happened. For a certain time, and not even that long ago, it was utopian for two women to marry and have children and found a family, yet today it happens. So now I'd like to represent some of the institutions that we need to get rid of in order to move forward. Some institutions that I consider to be obsolete and even harmful and holding us back in the representation of a future without oppression. And these institutions are marriage. It means that marriage as an institution has been upholding patriarchal structures, and has contributed and continues to contribute to the inequality faced by women on a systemic, structural, and personal level. The marriage as an institution continues to uphold capitalist structures and the nation state as well, and all the difficult aspects that it represents. So marriage as an institution should be replaced, because the abolition of systems doesn't mean that it's the void that comes after that nothing will replace it. But the abolition of certain systems is the precondition for an entirely new, fundamentally new systems to emerge. Also learning from the past mistakes of the institutions we knew, but also having enough space to be able to unfold with freedom and with a vision for the future. So marriage is one of the institutions. Another institution or other institutions that will need to be abolished in order to dismantle oppression entirely would be the police and prisons. So it doesn't mean that we would be living in a society where chaos and criminality would rule the world. But instead of having police and prisons, which are based on obsolete societal structures and which predominantly criminalize poverty and predominantly criminalize certain groups of the population, which are already lacking access to resources, to political voice, etc., it means that these institutions would need to be replaced to ensure the security and the safety of all people, not just a certain segment of society. Another institution that would need to be abolished, and that I envision in utopian futures, is the nation state and national borders. So all these institutions that I've mentioned appear to be institutions that we deem indispensable, timeless, and absolutely necessary for the normal functioning of the world. But it's not the case. It means that these institutions were invented, they can also be abolished, and something else can emerge. So we need to have space and time and imagination in order to depict and give to life the world that we want. In this sense, utopian futures and their articulation are a tremendous force and have tremendous power in order to bring social progress. And I hope that we can continue together to think about utopians, utopian futures. I hope that we have together the chance and the power to imagine utopian futures. Thank you.